Now today, insha'Allah ta'ala, we're going to start going over renting and hiring. In the title, it says renting, hiring, leasing, and employing. The intention here is that all of those are one and the same. It came to my attention that the British might use it slightly different from the American. I don't know about Australian. Because we might tend, that is, Americans, might tend to say renting a car. The American might tend to say, I want to rent a car. So I was told that a British person would say, I want to hire a car. So that shows you they mean the same thing. An American might say, I want to hire a worker. So that means you're renting a worker. And leasing here means renting. Yeah, lease a car, yes. And also the Americans would say lease a car. Yes, this is renting. So ijara, this Arabic word is important here. There's a language barrier when it comes to these dealings. Ijara, renting or hiring, those are going to be our more default words here. Hiring and renting. Leasing is thrown in there. Employing is thrown in there. And maybe some other words will appear also. But basically we'll repeat these. Hiring and renting. Renting and hiring. Ijara. This one word covers both of those. Is to transfer the ownership of a specific, usually sought, transferable benefit for a specific fee. Transfer the ownership of a benefit. The hiring and the renting is transferring the ownership of a benefit. Yani, it is temporarily selling a right. It's the temporary sale of a right. You might say, but you keep saying that sales are not temporary. That's right, sales are not temporary. That's why this is not really a sale. If it were a sale, it would be a temporary one. But sales are not temporary. And if it were a sale, it would not be a sale of the object itself. It would be a sale of its benefit, which is the right to it. That means the use of it, the usage of it, not the object itself. The original owner is going to maintain ownership of the object itself. So when you rent out your house, you still own the house, you still own the car, you still own the horse, etc. But you don't own the benefit of it. So you can't just take it back. You sold the benefit of it. You sold the right of it to someone else. But temporarily. When the contract expires, the right of it will go back to you. So it is to transfer the ownership of a specific, usually sought. We talked about what usually sought means. Like, you don't rent an apple to sniff it. That's not usually sought. Transferable benefit. Transferable refers to a benefit that you can transfer, as opposed to one that you can't. Like what? Like the benefit of a private part. This is not rentable. So that's not transferable benefit. Ijara, hiring and renting, is to transfer the ownership of a specific, usually sought transferable benefit for a specific fee, a known fee. Also, this fee, we can give it different words. We can call this fee the rent. Or we can call it what? The wage. Or we could call it some other words that mean that. Your wage, that's your fee. If you're an employee, then your employer has to pay the rent. That's paying you your salary. He's paying his rent. Therefore, the fee cannot be being fed and clothed, because that's not a specific fee, being fed and clothed. So you can't hire him to work your land in exchange for feeding him and clothing him. Nor can the fee be a percentage. We talked about that. Percentage means you don't know exactly how much you're going to get, because you don't know the end. When you get hired, you know how much you're going to get. That's why it's not valid to rent the taxi cab by a meter. When he turns the meter on and he tells you how much it's going to cost when you get to the end, that's invalid, because the fee has not been specified for the job. But when you do Lyft or Uber, that is valid, because they're telling you this job is going to cost such and such. And if the fee cannot be a percentage, then all of the deals that deal with percentage are not going to be called renting or hiring. Well, that's why I said there's a language barrier. Because maybe in English you might say that, can't say it's going to be wrong language. But now we're translating basically what some people might call Sharia law. That's how they would say it. Sharia law. So translating that into English, if ijara is hiring or renting, then a deal that its payment is a percentage is not going to be a hire or a rental, assuming it's valid. What is a deal in which a percentage is the wage? For example, profit sharing. What's profit sharing? Profit sharing, as you know, is one person has the money, the other person does the trading. So the fact that you have the money and you want to find someone to do the trading, you might call that hiring, but in our lessons we're not going to call that hiring, for more than one reason. One of those reasons is that the payment is a percentage. You're going to say to him, we'll split it 50-50, or we'll split it 70-30, or etc., whatever you agree to. And so accordingly, musaqa is not ijara. Musaqa is the tending that we keep talking about. Also here, the point of this sentence is to address the language barrier. In the Arabic, they don't have to say it's not ijara. It has a completely different name. It's musaqa. So there's a chapter called musaqa, and there's a chapter called ijara. What's musaqa? Musaqa is when you, if we want to use the word hire someone to tend to date palms or grapevines, and you're going to pay him what? A percentage of the yield. So just for the fact that the payment here is a percentage, then we're not going to, in our lessons, call this hiring. But maybe you might say, I hired this field hand to take care of, to tend to my palm trees and my date and my grapevines. So I'm not going to say that's wrong language. So pay attention here to the terminologies. Also, the prices of parts and labor must be separate. We talked about that too. So it's nice that here we came to a point where many things we said before have come back again. So that now by the time we came to them in their place, it's clear. It's not just thrown at you. The prices of parts and labor must be separate. We talked about that. We said that, yeah, there's another saying that they can be together. But how about we not take that saying here? If you don't take that saying here and you take what's here, parts and labor must be separate, then this will enhance your comprehension of dealings. If you put parts and labor together and then you don't think very well about it, then you're going to increase your chances for muddling your contract. Parts and labor, separate them. And when we say separate parts and labor, it doesn't mean that you can't give the customer one price. You can give the customer one price in the end, but by separating parts and labor simply means you're letting him know this one price in the end, part of it is for the parts. That's this. I'm selling those parts to you. That's sale. That part's the sale. And this part of the final price, that's the labor. That's my rental. You're renting me. So the total of what it's going to cost for you to hire me and buy these parts from me and hire me to assemble them for you, the total is going to be $6,000, for example. That's valid. What's not valid is to say parts and labor is $6,000, period. There are two types of hiring. Leasing a specific thing. So putting the word lease here is not for any special reason. It's only to juggle the words around. So you could put hire there if you want. You could put rent there if you want. Leasing a specific thing, an ayn, an individual thing, like a car, a particular car. So you go to the car rental, they're going to rent you this one. Or employing a specific person. I hire you to do this job personally. It's your job. Nobody else is to do it. Leasing a specific thing, like a car, or employing a specific person. So employing means hiring, that one can easily benefit from immediately after the contract. When you rent or hire, then it starts immediately, like a sale. Do you buy something and it's not yours yet? We talked about that. You don't buy something and it's not yours yet. Likewise, you don't hire something, you don't rent something and it's not yours yet. If your practice is to, for example, rent an apartment to a person and tell him when he wants to rent from you, okay, we'll do the contract on Friday, you can move in on Monday. Don't do that. That's like saying to him, I'll sell it to you on Friday and you can have it on Monday. And what would be someone's motivation for this practice? It's an unfairness. But a lot of times the people don't recognize their lack of fairness. Someone thinks that because he's the one with the house, he's the one who owns the property, that he's taking the greater risk here. So he should be able to take the security deposit just in case, and he should be able to let you sign the paper, but you can't move in yet. No. Remember, renting and hiring is a risky deal. but it's a risk that the religion allowed you to take. So you can't try to offset that risk by being unfair, saying to the person, give me security deposit just in case you wreck some of my property. No. If you wreck some of your property, then deal with it when it happens. You don't take security deposit ahead of time, just in case. And you don't do the contract now, but it's not in effect until later. So leasing a specific thing, like a car, or employing a specific person, this is a type of hiring. A thing or person that one can easily benefit from immediately after the contract, just like a sale. It starts immediately. For upfront payment or delayed payment, didn't we talk about that last 2 weeks? You don't have to always exchange on the spot. Sometimes you have to exchange on the spot. Sometimes one side has to exchange and the other side delivers later. So when you do the hiring, you don't have to exchange on the spot. Didn't we say that the exchange is not the contract? The contract is the words itself. So when you say to him, I hire you for such and such, the contract is now done. So then how do you exchange? For upfront payment or delayed payment, on demand. For upfront payment or delayed payment. So upfront payment means you hired him, but upfront payment means what both sides are handing over. Don't forget, it's 2 ways here. When you hire the person, you're paying him. His salary is like his doing the work for you. His doing the work for you is like he's paying you your salary. It's like you're hiring him to pay you a salary, which is to do work for you. Didn't we say that the seller and the buyer are really the same thing? Only difference is the preposition in the words. I sell to you. I buy from you. But really, they're the same. The seller is buying the other person's money. The buyer is selling his money to the seller. They're the same, really. Also, the employer and the employee, really, they're on equal footing. Just like the seller and the buyer, they're on equal footing. You might say, how are they on equal footing? I'm the boss. I'm doing the hiring here. You are on equal footing, though. Because the other one can say, hey, hold on a second. I'm the employee here. I'm doing the work here. This is the work that I agreed to. Not something else, just like you as the employee. Just like you as the employer, you might say, this is what I agreed to pay you. Get to work. He could say to you, this is the work I agreed to do. Give up the payment. You're on equal footing here, really. If you think like that, that's going to make you a stronger dealer. So, how did we get here? How are we talking about this equal footing? Because we're saying each side has something to give. From this perspective, they're on equal footing, just like a sale. When you're the seller, your buyer is not inferior to you or superior to you. When you're a buyer, the seller is not inferior to you or superior to you. You're both giving something. For upfront or delayed payment. So the word payment here, that includes the work if you're hired to work. Your work is your payment to him. And the salary is his payment to you. So each side has a payment to give. So that renting and that hiring is going to be for upfront payment from either side or delayed payment from either side. So that means the employer might pay first and then the employee works later. Or the employee might work first, and then the employer pays later. Or they might do it at the same time. Says, here's the money, get to work right now. I'll pay you right now, you get to work right now. Whatever they agree to. Or on demand if otherwise specified. Or on demand if otherwise specified. So who's demanding here? Who can tell me the answer? When we say or on demand if otherwise specified, who's the demander here? The demander here is either one of them. They're equal. Either one of them. So the worker can demand his salary. He can say, pay me, even if he didn't work yet. Because you did the contract. Now you owe him. And the employer can demand the work. He can say, get to work, even if you didn't pay him yet. So on demand if otherwise specified. Who's the demander? Either side. Let me know if you have any question there, please. So that's one type of hiring. That's called ijaratu ayn. Ijaratu ayn, leasing a specific thing or employing a specific person. Ayn means an individual. Just like you say, fard ayn, personal obligatory knowledge, same ayn. Personal. Yani, a thing in particular. And the second type of hiring is hiring a company or hiring an agency or billing one's tab, zimma, which means hiring someone to get a job done, but not by anyone in particular. So don't get mixed up here. When we say no one in particular is hired to do the job, doesn't mean you're not hiring someone, though. You are hiring someone because you got to do the contract with somebody. So if Abdul Salam has the business or Sister Farah has the business, yani the agency, then I can hire this person, but I'm hiring them for their agency. So it's not that I'm hiring this person to do the work personally. This is called ijaratu dhimma. Hiring to get a job done, not by anyone in particular, for an upfront payment only. Not upfront or delayed or on demand if otherwise specified, for an upfront payment only. This type of hiring is more similar to salam sale. What's salam sale? Salam sale when you put in an order for the guy to get something for you and deliver it to you. He might not know where he's going to get it from. When you hire the agency, you're not hiring for one person in particular to do the work. And you must pay up front. Just like in salam sale, advance payment sale, you have to pay up front. Hiring the agency means you have to pay up front. And we talked about that. And in the course of talking about that, we talked about how a check is not an upfront payment. Because what's a check? Who can remind us? What is a check? A check is a note to your authorized person. It's not a payment. Yes, the check is a note to your authorized person. Not a note to your authorizer. You're the authorizer. It's your money if you're giving the check. It's a note to your authorized person. So that's not an upfront payment. It's just a note. It's just a message to someone. It's like if you took out a piece of paper and you wrote, give Fulan this much money. And then you gave him the paper, said, take this to Fulan. And you sign it. So then he takes it to Fulan, and Fulan looks at it. He sees the signature. He knows the signature. Then he says, okay, hold on. And then he pulls out the box and gives you some money. That's what a check is.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
So I just want to be clear. So you're saying a deposit can't be given in the form of a check.
That's correct.
Is there a way to say how most things are done? Like most contractors, they're willing to accept this note. Is there a way to make giving the check valid in those cases?
Only if that check is an upfront payment, which it's not.
So even is there any wording that can be said then?
No, because the words is not the exchange. The words is not the exchange. The words is just the contract. And this type of contract requires an upfront payment.
Okay, got it.
No. Just like advance payment sale requires upfront payment, not a check. So, hiring a company or an agency or billing one's tab means hiring to get a job done not by anyone in particular for an upfront payment, or else it will be a debt for a debt. That's what you're trying to avoid here, a debt for a debt. So the words are not going to make it not a debt for a debt. That's why you just have to give them an upfront payment, or else you're going to fall into a debt for a debt. But see, if the Muslims really deal according to Shara rules, they will dominate any economy. Who are they going to want to work for? You? That's going to pay him, give him his cash right in his hand. And you deal fair too? Or he's going to want to work for the guy who's going to give him a check, and then he has to take the taxes out, and he's going to much rather prefer dealing with you. Now, but you might say, okay, but the potential of a problem here seems higher to me, because if I pay him up front and he didn't work yet, what if he doesn't work? So what's the answer? Renting and hiring is a risky deal, but it's a risk that the religion allowed you to take. Fundamentally, originally, risky deals are forbidden. Naha Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam an bay'il gharar. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam forbade the risky sale. That means any risky deal. What is the risk? The risk is for one or both contractors to not know the outcome, or for the outcome, the anticipated outcome to be detrimental, most likely to be detrimental. That the most anticipated outcome is detrimental. This is risky deal. Take that definition there and then apply it to each deal. So renting, it is a risky deal. You're not allowed to offset that risk, so I'm telling you here. This is what, when you think, I'm be straightforward with you here, when you think like a kafir, that's when you're going to try to offset this risk. You can't offset this risk. You're going to take it if you want to. According to the Hanafis, one can rent or hire a confirmed future benefit. Not absolutely. Because what does confirmed future benefit mean? It means it doesn't start immediately. We just spent a lot of time saying starts immediately. The Hanafi said you can do a rental that doesn't start immediately. That's what this means. A confirmed future benefit. A rental that doesn't start immediately. You did the contract with him on Friday and he can move in on Monday. According to the Hanafis, one can rent or hire a confirmed future benefit in a non-Muslim land from a non-Muslim. When we say, according to the Hanafis, you can do it in a non-Muslim land from a non-Muslim, that means that fundamentally is haram. The deal must be either for a specified time, which deal, this rental or hire. I'm not talking about the confirmed future one in particular. I'm talking about our topic in general, the renting, hiring, leasing, employing. This deal must be either for a specified time, like lodging. There's no other way to gauge the lodging but by time. Or the deal has to be for a job, which is a task, like making Hajj for someone. So what do? You complete the task. How much time it takes, that's different matter. Complete the task. So which one should you do? Whichever one is most advantageous for you. If it's most advantageous for you to hire him for his time, then hire him for his time. But if you hire him for the time, then you did not hire him for a task in particular. So what you're going to do? You could give him a task in particular, but really the contract is based on the time. Then give him a task if you want. Or you can give him more than one task because you hired him for his time. If you hire him for his time and he's still on the clock, and you give him a task and he finished and he's still on the clock, then you might say, okay, now take out the trash. Okay, go rake those leaves now. How much time you got? You still got a minute left? Go get that dust from under the dresser there. You go get that there. That should take you a minute, and then you can go. Hire him for a time or for a task. If that's most advantageous for you, then hire him for the task. A lot of times that's going to be the way you need to do it, because it's going to be too difficult to gauge it by time. Like when you're dealing with real estate, or when you're dealing with trades. If a guy's a plumber, you're not going to probably hire him for the time. You're going to hire him for the task. Or if he's an electrician, because he needs to get the job done. It might take 2 days, might take 1 day, might take 3 days, might take 5 hours, might take 7 hours. So it's not the time, it's the task you want completed. Then,
Sheikh,
yes.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I'm trying to be clear on this.
Yes.
For a task, when I hire a guy to rewire a house for me,
Yeah.
and this person says, I'll rewire the house for you. I'm going to buy the material. So he is supposed to give me just his total price of what he is going to charge, including the material, correct?
As long as you know how much the material is out of that final price, and how much his work is out of that final price.
So I need to know both numbers.
Yes.
Now, for me, the remaining material is mine, correct?
Yeah, because you bought it. It's yours.
All right. Now, in these cases, when a deposit is asked for, can I tell him that I don't do deposits?
Here we're not talking about necessarily. Your question to me is not necessarily about hiring the agency. So you can do a deposit. The only time you have to pay up front, which means a check is not valid, is when you're hiring the agency. That's not for someone in particular to do it. If you're hiring the guy himself to do it personally, then you can give him a deposit, meaning some of the money, for example, now. Or give him a check, which means, and he's going to go to your authorized person and get the money later.
Understood.
Okay.
Barakallah.
Amin Wafiq. Okay, so then one deserves his salary based on the time, if that's what you hired him for, even if the job is incomplete, because you didn't hire him for the job. So if the job's incomplete, still deserves a salary if the time is done. When the whistle blows. Once the whistle blows, then even if the job's not complete, you owe him his salary. He deserves his salary. Or he deserves his salary based on the job, regardless of the time it took. If it can go either way, like stitching, You could hire him to do this task of stitching. You say, stitch this pile of fabric here, like this. So that's his task. Or you might say to him, I hire you for an hour. Start stitching. So it's the time. Then one way must be specified. You can't do both of them. You can't say, stitch all of these in an hour. That's invalid. You can't basically say, complete this task in an hour. That's invalid. You can say, complete this task. Or you can say, work for an hour. It is valid to base the salary on each completed unit. That's valid. You can say, I'll give you $10 for each one you complete. And it's valid to be a broker. That's someone who helps you to do your contract. He helps you find customers and to negotiate and everything. That's a valid task. The religion affords the employee time for purification, obligatory prayer, and the associated sunnah prayers. Who's the one who really needs to know that? The employer. Because when you go to work for someone and you're on the clock, he might see you sitting down. He might say, why are you sitting down? You're on the clock. So this one who would say to you, why are you sitting down? He might need to know that the religion affords the employee time for purification, obligatory prayer, and associated sunnah prayers. Now, if the one who hired you is non-Muslim, then he might not recognize that. So you're going to work around it. But if you're a Muslim employer and you have Muslim employee, then know that the religion affords the employee time for purification, obligatory prayer, and the associated sunnah prayers. Hiring invalidly requires repentance because it's haram. And if the job is done, a commensurate salary is due because he didn't work for free. So you did an invalid hiring. Can you say, oh no, turns out our deal was invalid, and now after all of your sweat and blood, I'm not going to give you a dime. Sorry, fella. La, he didn't work for free, although it was invalid. So then you still owe him. What do you owe him? You owe him a commensurate salary. That means whatever that job is worth on the market, whether it's more or less than your invalid agreement. What's that like? We talk about commensurate salary. That's like how you have to give a woman sometimes commensurate dowry. Once the contract is done, the salary cannot be changed. We already talked about which deals are binding from both sides, which deals are binding from one side, and which deals are non-binding. Binding from both sides means neither side can get out of it. When we say the salary can't be changed, that implies what? Also can't be changed. The other side too. If the salary can't be changed, then also the work or the time can't be changed. Renting and hiring is binding contract. That means you can't get out of it. You can't quit and you can't fire. Rather, you fulfill the contract. But what you can do is pardon. You can't quit and you can't fire, but you can pardon. So that means that renting and hiring is more like a loan. It's more similar to a loan. If you loan someone money, can he say, Yani, if Hajj Kenyatta, for example, he gave someone a loan, can you say, Hajj, remember that loan you gave me? I quit. Can't do it. It's still there. So same thing. That's how hiring and renting is. It's binding from both sides. You can't fire, you can't quit, but you can pardon. That one you gave a loan to, couldn't you say to him, you know what, brother, it's cool. I pardon you. You don't have to give me anything. That's valid. So once the contract is done, the salary cannot be changed. And while one is in the process of completing the task or the time, he deserves the commensurate salary. So that means as he's in the process of completing, he's getting closer and closer to completion, he's deserving the commensurate salary as the progress goes. How much is his work worth? How much is his work worth? How much is his work worth? In the process of completing the task or the time, he is deserving a commensurate salary. So, if something happens before completion, then you might need to just pay him the commensurate salary until completing his end of the bargain, and then he deserves the agreed amount, regardless of market price. If one rented a specific thing that was destroyed, then he pays the due percentage. Yani he pays what's left, or not what's left. He pays what's due. So he rented a house for 12 months for $100 per month. Then the house collapsed after 6 months. So how much does he owe him? $600. What's the status of this deal now? It's done. It's over. Because the actual subject is destroyed now. That's not the same as quitting or firing. You can't quit and you can't fire, but if you rented a specific thing that was destroyed, then this is going to cancel your deal, and then you just pay whatever's owed. And the rest is canceled. If one rented or hired for a known amount, not a specific item, that is valid even if he cannot pay immediately. What does that mean? He rented or hired for a known amount and not a specific item. Because there's a difference between saying, I hire you for $100, and saying, I hire you for this $100. That's different. Those are two different cases there. So when he says, I hire you for $100, then that's hiring him for a known amount. If he said, I hire you for this $100, then that's hiring him for a specific item. That is valid, hiring him for a known amount, not a specific item. That is valid even if he cannot pay immediately. So if he says, I hire you for $100, and he can't pay him right now, it's valid. But if he says, but if he did so for a specific item, so he says, I hire you for this $100. I hire you for this barrel of wheat. Then it must be seen. And he must be able to pay it immediately. Now he has to pay it immediately. He must be able to. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. Alhamdulillah, we got all of that in within the hour. Now the next section, this is a subsection. So this renting plowland and hiring field hands. When we went over this book before, this section, and that's page 26 in my copy. So if that's still matching my copy, should be page 26. This topic, renting plowland and hiring field hands. When we went over this book before, I skipped it because most of us are not. I don't know if any of you are farmers. So I don't think that any of us who are directly conversing with each other are farmers. Now, when I put the lessons out, put the recordings out, maybe someone's a farmer and he listens to it and benefits from some information. But because it's not usually, doesn't seem to usually be the case that any of us are farmers, I've been skipping this. This time, I don't want to skip it. It's next week, we'll read this section on renting plowland and hiring field hands, even if none of us is a farmer. So that, we will at least have completed this chapter, this part of the knowledge. And maybe you will benefit a farmer one day. Or maybe you'll become a farmer. Who knows? Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. There's a question here. If A hires B to do a job, B takes too long, so A has to get another person, but he already paid B. What's due? He needs to get out of that contract so he can pardon him, or they can do a settlement. If they do a settlement, then however they agree by the settlement. If he pardons, if one or both sides pardon, thing is, even if you pardon him, doesn't mean he pardons you. Just like canceling. Remember how you could say, I seal the deal. It's only going to be from your side. Doesn't mean the other one can't still break it. So even if you pardoned him, doesn't mean he pardons you. So if you said, look, you're not getting this work done, I pardon you. He might say, okay, pay me everything. Fine. You can pardon me all you want. I want full payment. So then if the next question is, how do I avoid that? Then I'm going to say to you, renting and hiring is what? Is a risky deal. And fundamentally risky deals are invalid. Accept the risks that the religion allowed you to take. So if you want to take the risk, take it. Then you might find yourself in this situation you're asking me about. Yani, a big confusion, for example. So, any other question? And if you want to follow up with your question there, feel free, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
You said something earlier that the hirer could give some of the Muslims time to pray and do the sunnah prayers.
Yes.
And it's on the course of his job. But if the Muslim who's hired a non-Muslim too, and the non-Muslim hears this, you give, and the non-Muslim come back and tell you, well, you give him extra time to do things. I want extra time too, so to lay around, sit around too.
So if it were me, I would say to him, don't worry about somebody else. Do we have an agreement between me and you? Yes? Then get back to work.
Gotcha. Because I know a lot of time in this country anyway, you know, the kuffar
Yeah.
deal with these man-made laws, and they get, you know.
Yeah, everybody's worried about what somebody else has.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. I don't have that. That's my agreement with him. My agreement with him is not your business.
I got you, sis. Thank you.
You're welcome. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك